The prey that became the hunter. Mandy's scales itched with the frustration of an entire cycle spent among what he called the barbarians of the galaxy. He had never felt so out of place, so humiliated. As the heat rock beneath him flickered to life, warming his blood, Mandy brooded over his situation. Here he was, far from the comforts of his home on Redridge Secundus, stranded in the middle of a star station populated by soft, weak creatures. Worse, the few opportunities that had been available to him had slipped away, each one leaving a bitter sting. He had applied to join the ranks of the blooded, an esteemed title among his people, one reserved for those who had proven their strength by spilling blood in combat. It was more than just a title. It was a gateway to respect, influence, and most importantly, the chance to earn a mate. But the elders had denied him, not because of a lack of effort, but because of one simple reason. He was unblooded. He had not yet proven himself in battle, not yet slain his first worthy opponent. It had all come to a head when Mandy, full of youthful arrogance and bravado, had approached the elders, requesting to begin courtship. He had expected praise, a chance to be seen as strong, virile, and capable of siring the next generation of hunters. But what he had received instead was rejection. Unworthy, they had called him. Not because of his strength, his size, or his prowess. No, the elders had dismissed him with a single cutting word: unblooded. Mandy understood their reasons, but that didn't make it easier. The truth hurt more than any physical wound. It gnawed at his pride. They had rejected him because he had not killed another in combat, because he had never wielded a weapon in anger, because his claws had never tasted the blood of a worthy opponent. And worse, his youth, which he believed to be his greatest asset, was now seen as nothing but a bitter reminder of his lack of experience. The last time he had been on Redridge Secundus, he had been shown his place in the hierarchy of their society. The elders had told him, bluntly and without passion, that his future was uncertain unless he gained blood and honor in the eyes of the Empire. He was no hunter, no warrior. To the elders, Mandy was a fool. And as his tail twitched in agitation, he realized they were right, at least in their eyes. He had no honor, no den, no spoils, and no enemies slain to show for his name. His thoughts drifted to his surroundings, to the station that was now his reluctant home. He had expected to find a place among the warlike star sailors, or perhaps even the cold-blooded Joe, but instead, he found himself surrounded by the warmth of warm bloods. The barbarians, he called them. Small, weak creatures who lived in their own filth, wasting heat and resources, oblivious to the struggles that came with being truly strong. Yet, Mandy could not help but focus his ire on one species in particular, the humans. The ones he saw everywhere, bustling about with their furry companions, seemingly impervious to the harshness of the world around them. Mandy sneered at their ridiculousness. These humans, so small, so fragile, so completely unfit for the dangers of the galaxy. They were prey, nothing more. Why else would they keep large, fierce animals like dogs or cats as protectors? Only prey needed protection from predators. That was the law of the universe, one that had been etched into Mandy's mind from birth. Mandy knew the truth, even if the elders had turned a blind eye to it. He had seen their histories, studied their behavior, and the more he understood the humans, the more convinced he became that they were nothing but prey animals. The stories told of their partnership with animals, their claim of mutual protection, but Mandy had no doubt. These creatures were weak. No matter how the galaxy painted them, he was certain. They had no true power. They were food, and he would prove it. The more Mandy sat in the crowded station, watching the humans shuffle about, the more his resentment grew. Their helplessness was maddening. They were barely able to fend for themselves, their bodies too soft, their movements too clumsy. They wasted heat with every step, and yet the station's systems catered to them. It made Mandy sick. How could a race so frail and defenseless survive in a galaxy full of predators like himself? And yet, his thoughts began to change as he watched them. These humans, these prey animals, lived with such ease, surrounded by their defenses. They wore no armor, carried no weapons, yet there they were, untouched, oblivious to the true threats around them. This was an opportunity. Mandy's mind clicked as the idea formed. He could prove himself. He could show his elders that he was worthy. All he needed to do was one simple thing: kill a human, the ultimate prey, the most vulnerable being in the galaxy. He would strike in the heart of their station, in front of their defenseless faces, and he would blood himself. Once he had done that, he would return to the elders, his claws stained with the blood of the most helpless species in the galaxy. He would be blooded. He would earn their respect, and perhaps even earn the right to court a strong mate. The idea consumed him as he watched the humans go about their daily lives, unaware of the hunter watching from the shadows. One of them, a human male, stood alone in the station's atrium. Mandy's eyes narrowed. He was small, dressed in simple clothing, unaware of the predator lurking nearby. The perfect target. The perfect moment. All Mandy needed was to move in, take him down, and return to the station's dock to board a star sailor ship. The human's blood would be the proof he needed. Mandy's claws flexed, and his tail twitched in anticipation. His body coiled, ready to spring. The human was oblivious to the fate that awaited him. Mandy's steps were silent, his eyes locked on the human's figure as he moved through the crowd. The other creatures passed by, not even noticing the predator in their midst. Mandy's heart pounded in his chest. This was it. The chance to prove himself, to become blooded, to earn the respect he deserved. But as Mandy closed the distance, the human suddenly turned, eyes locking onto his. The predator froze, taken aback. The human didn't flee. He didn't scream or panic. Instead, he stood tall, unflinching. Mandy hesitated for a split second, wondering why the prey was so calm. The human's eyes met his, and for a brief moment, Mandy thought he saw something. Something far from fear. Something dangerous. The prey that did not run. Mandy had anticipated many things when he set his sights on the human. He had expected fear, expected wide eyes and trembling limbs. He had expected the human to panic, to run, to react as all prey did when confronted with a predator. Yet, none of that happened. Instead, the human stood his ground. The two locked eyes across the busy station corridor. Mandy's body was coiled, his muscles tensed, ready to strike. His reptilian instincts screamed for him to lunge, to finish this before his prey had a chance to escape. But something in that human's gaze topped him. It wasn't fear. It wasn't even confusion. It was calculated. The human knew. Mandy's mind raced, trying to decipher the meaning of this reaction. Every fiber of his being told him that humans were weak, that they were nothing more than prey animals who had managed to scamper their way into the galactic stage. Yet here was one, standing in the middle of a crowded corridor, staring him down as if he were the one being hunted. For the first time in his life, Mandy hesitated. The pause was brief, but it was enough. The human took a slow, deliberate step forward, the crowd shifting around him like water parting before an approaching storm. Mandy couldn't understand it. Why wasn't the human running? Why wasn't it calling for help? It was alone, no other humans in sight, no protective war beasts at its side. And yet something about the human's posture sent a ripple of unease through Mandy's chest. Then the human spoke. "I was wondering when you'd finally move." The words were soft but carried a weight that made Mandy's throat tighten. The human had seen him coming. No more than that. It had been waiting for him. Mandy's claws flexed. This was wrong. This was not how this was supposed to go. Prey runs. Prey panics. Prey fears the hunter. And yet this one did not. Mandy narrowed his golden eyes, his tail flicking in irritation. He would not be intimidated by a weak, soft-fleshed thing. He stepped forward as well, pushing down the strange sensation creeping through his body. The moment had come. He had to strike. No one else in the station paid them any mind. The station's atrium was a busy place, a place where warm-blooded creatures moved in groups, unaware of the tension brewing between two individuals in their midst. The perfect hunting ground. Mandy inhaled slowly, letting the scent of the human fill his nostrils. A final breath before the kill. He lunged. Mandy's claws slashed forward in a blur of movement, fast and precise. His kind were not just strong, they were swift, bred from generations of hunters who had survived in the most unforgiving environments. His strike should have been perfect, but it wasn't. The human moved. Not back, not to the side, but forward. Before Mandy even processed what had happened, a sharp, explosive pain shot through his chest. The world twisted violently as his body slammed into the ground, his vision spinning as he struggled to understand. He had been hit. Mandy gasped, a snarl ripping from his throat as he scrambled to his feet, his claws scraping against the metallic floor. His vision cleared just in time to see the human standing over him. No weapons, no armor, just fists. Mandy had never been knocked down before, not like this, not so easily. His mind struggled to make sense of it, but his body knew one thing for certain. This human was not prey. The human sighed, shaking his hand as if disappointed. You telegraph your movements too much. If you were going to attack me, you should have at least tried to be subtle about it. Mandy's breathing was ragged, his pride burning hotter than the pain in his ribs. He snarled, his predator's instincts rebelling against the reality unfolding before him. He should have won. This should have been easy. Humans were weak, pathetic, prey. Yet he was the one sprawled on the ground. Mandy pushed himself upright, every muscle in his body coiling like a spring. He had to reclaim the upper hand. His honor demanded it. He lunged again, this time with more caution, more calculation. It didn't matter. The human moved again, faster than should have been possible for something so small. A quick step to the side, a sudden shift in weight, and then Mandy was falling again. A sharp force struck his knee, buckling it inward, followed by another blow to his side. Mandy crashed into the ground once more. Pain shot through his spine, and humiliation burned beneath his scales. What was happening? This human, this creature he had deemed inferior, had read him like a book. It wasn't just defending itself, it was toying with him. And then it hit him. This wasn't an accident. The human had known. From the very moment their eyes had met, it had known exactly what Mandy was planning. It had let him make the first move. It had waited. Not prey. Hunter. Mandy's breathing was heavy now, his pride warring with the reality of the situation. He wanted to lash out, to deny what was unfolding before him. But his instincts, those same instincts that had guided his ancestors for generations, were screaming at him now. This was no ordinary human. The human exhaled, stepping back slightly. It wasn't in a rush. It wasn't afraid. It was in control. Tell me, the human said, his voice calm, almost conversational. Did you think I wouldn't notice you watching me? Mandy's jaw tightened. His mind reeled, grasping at excuses, at explanations. He had been careful. He had studied his target. He had planned every move. And still, he had been seen. The human continued, taking another slow step forward. Your kind always think they're the ones doing the hunting, that you're the ones in control. A pause. Then, the faintest hint of a smile. But let me tell you something, lizard. If you think humans are prey, you've already lost. Mandy stiffened. He had never been spoken to like this before. Never been regarded with such certainty by a species he had dismissed as weak. And for the first time in his life, a new and foreign feeling crept into Mandy's chest. Not anger, not frustration. Fear. His tail curled involuntarily, his claws twitching at his sides. He didn't know what to do. He didn't know how to react. This wasn't supposed to happen. The human sighed and glanced around the busy atrium, as if just now remembering they were surrounded by people. You should walk away now, the human said, voice quiet. Because if you don't, I'm going to teach you exactly why your kind never hunts mine. Mandy didn't reply. He couldn't. Because deep down, beneath all the layers of arrogance, rage, and confusion, he already knew the truth. The hunt had already ended. And for the first time ever, he was the prey, the predator's fall. Mandy had always believed in the simplicity of the hunt. There was prey, and there were hunters. The strong thrived, and the weak perished. It was the way of nature, the law of the universe, the foundation upon which his people had built their civilization. Yet, as he knelt on the cold station floor, his ribs aching, his breath shallow, and his muscles burning from where he had been struck, he could feel that foundation crumbling beneath him. He was the one who had fallen. And the human was still standing. The shame was unbearable. A thick, suffocating weight pressing down on him, heavier than the pain in his body. This wasn't how things were supposed to go. This wasn't how the story of his first kill was meant to be written. He had prepared for this moment. He had planned for it. He had watched humans from the shadows, studied their weaknesses, proven beyond a doubt that they were soft, slow creatures dependent on their war beasts for protection. Yet when the moment had come, he had been the one hunted. Mandy's claws curled against the floor, his tail coiling tightly against his leg. He could feel his heartbeat hammering against his ribs, each pulse a painful reminder that he was still alive. And that meant something even worse. The human had chosen to let him live. His golden eyes flicked upward, scanning the figure standing over him. The human didn't gloat. He didn't bare his teeth in a victorious display. He didn't even look particularly angry. If anything, he looked bored, as if this entire confrontation had been an inconvenience. That stung worse than anything. Mandy was nothing to him. You hesitated, the human said, tilting his head slightly. His voice wasn't mocking or cruel, just observant, like a scientist watching an animal in a lab. That was your first mistake. Mandy's jaw tightened, his nostrils flaring. He wanted to argue, to insist that he had been caught off guard, that he had miscalculated, that this was an anomaly. But he knew it was a lie. His mistake had not been hesitation. His mistake had been assuming the human was prey. The human took a step closer, and Mandy had to fight the urge to flinch. His entire body was betraying him, instincts screaming at him to retreat, to flee, to find some dark hole and vanish before this creature decided to finish what had been started. He was afraid. The realization was a dagger through his pride. Mandy had never known fear. He had never been prey before. Now, every instinct in his body was telling him to run. You thought I didn't notice you watching me, the human continued. You thought I didn't hear you following me. You thought I didn't know you were hunting me. Mandy's blood turned to ice. The human had known. From the very beginning, he had known. The idea was horrifying. How? How had he detected him so easily? Mandy had been careful. He had tracked countless creatures before, from the razor-clawed stalkers of the desert plains to the venomous burrow beasts of his homeworld. He had never been noticed. He was a hunter by birthright, a creature designed to track and kill. Yet this human had seen him the entire time. You probably thought you were being clever, the human said, his voice calm, measured, following from a distance, moving between the shadows. Maybe you even thought I'd be nervous, that I'd run. But I don't run. Mandy clenched his jaw, his claws scraping against the floor. He didn't want to listen to this. He wanted to fight. He wanted to prove himself. Yet his body refused to move. The human crouched down in front of him, close enough that Mandy could see his own reflection in those dark, unblinking eyes. You have the instincts of a hunter, the human mused, tilting his head slightly, but not the experience. You've only hunted things that run from you. You've never faced something that fights back. Mandy bared his teeth. Humans don't fight back. The human smiled. Not a mocking smile. Not amused. Just knowing. Mandy didn't understand it. He didn't understand any of this. He had spent his entire life believing that humans were weak, that they were nothing more than scavengers who had survived the galaxy through sheer luck. But now he wasn't sure. The human exhaled softly, as if deciding something. Then, slowly, he reached into his jacket. Mandy tensed, his muscles locking, expecting a weapon. A blade, a gun, something sharp and deadly. His instincts screamed at him to move, to fight, but he was frozen. The human pulled out a small metal tag attached to a chain. It was simple, unassuming. But the moment Mandy saw the markings etched into the surface, his breath caught in his throat. It was a military insignia, a human military insignia. Mandy knew of human soldiers. Of course he did. His empire had fought alongside them in distant wars, had seen them win battles they had no right to win. The elders had always spoken of them with a strange mix of fear and awe, but Mandy had never understood why. Until now. "Your people think we're prey," the human said, slipping the tag back into his jacket. "And maybe that's what we wanted you to think." Mandy felt cold. A different kind of cold. Not the chill of the station's artificial air, but the deep, paralyzing cold of understanding too late. "You know," the human continued, standing up again, "I could have ended you the second you moved. The moment you made the decision to hunt me, you were already dead." Mandy swallowed. His throat was dry. "But I didn't," the human said, "because I wanted you to understand something before I let you walk away." Mandy forced himself to lift his gaze. He had never felt so small. "If you ever try this again," the human said, voice as calm as ever. "If you or any of your kind ever try to hunt humans again," he leaned in slightly, "we will hunt you back." The words settled into Mandy's bones like the weight of an entire planet crushing down on him. He wanted to move, to run, but the moment had passed. He had lost. He knew now why his elders feared humans. Because they had been playing deadlier games than anyone had realized. The human stepped back, turning as if Mandy wasn't worth another second of his time. "Go home, lizard. Tell your people what happened here. See if they still call us prey." Then, without another word, the human walked away. Mandy stayed on his knees for a long time. He did not follow. He did not hunt. Because for the first time in his life, he was prey. And the humans had let him live only because they wanted him to.